I have a joke in the beginning.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
We're on. Okay, go for it.
So especially before our bosses arrive, I want to tell a joke.
Hopefully they don't.
So, Brian, you might. We didn't rehearse this at all, but
in fact, Dwight doesn't even know what we're presenting. So.
Right. But I just want to make an announcement because I believe that you guys deserve to know that Stern is going to make Harry Potter in the next year. That was my joke.
That's pretty good.
It was a good joke. Yeah.
That was good. Okay. Of course, they all believed you, so I'm not sure they took it as a joke. But
well, they applaud it, so of course they believe it.
They were happy.
And I love Pam. Special thanks goes out to Pam for bringing me this water.
All right, you ready? All right, well, welcome everybody. Hopefully everybody's having a great time at Texas.
Yeah?
Pinball Fest. I am.
This is awesome. Texas?
I think it's Texas.
Okay.
Last I checked. We have a interesting presentation, hopefully. Is it up there? It is. Look at that. Big.
I'm going to look at this one.
Okay, me too. I have a lot of slides. We'll probably move through them pretty quick. So
it's a beast of a game, and we've been thinking about it for a long time.
Long time. Yeah, probably.
So we first
before Venom.
No.
Yeah. Well, not before Venom.
In the middle of Venom. Yeah. August 22 is when we learned about
the potential
to make this game. Yeah.
So it gave us a lot of time.
Think about that. August of 22. It's 25 right now. Okay.
It's been a while. Okay, let's jump in. So this is the making of Dungeons & Dragons Pinball. This is basically how we did it. It's not an exact chronological order, but it's pretty close.
I have no idea what we're about to see. I don't know why.
Dwight will correct anything, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So it is interactive. People have questions, raise your hand if you want during it. We're happy to answer any questions. So we'd like to start out first with, it's not just us in a room making a game. It's a massive team, and it's kind of broken into two different pieces. Right? Yeah. It's got a core team, which you see us, obviously the first two, we got Jerry, and we got Vince Pross. So Vince Pross is new to pinball. He did the artwork on the back glass and cabinet, and he kind of looks like that, right? Because it is him, but he's got that angst to him. But he's a really interesting character. Hopefully he can do some talks at some point. And then we have Tom Malcolm. I asked him for a photo. He's Scottish. He didn't send me one, so I thought this was pretty close.
Well, right? I thought that was him, yeah.
Yeah, he wears a kilt every day, so that's really interesting.
Yeah. Those socks are different, though.
Yeah, well, it's special occasions. And then we have John Rothamel, who was also mechanics. He's French, and he didn't send me a picture either, but I thought that was close.
Yeah, you can't be a mechanical engineer at Stern unless you're from another country.
Yeah, so it's true, we had two people. And then we have Paul Chamankit.
That's close.
That's close.
Chamankit. Just say it faster.
Chamankit?
Close.
Chamankit.
Yeah.
Okay. So Paul did all the video. He's a lead video artist and wrangled a massive team, and we'll have some slides about him too.
Okay.
All right. Or you can talk about this slide since I took your names.
So what do we have here? Oh, we have a lot of people there.
It's a huge team.
So I mean, you can look at that list. Do we want to talk about specific people? I want to talk about the software team.
Highlight, yeah.
Yeah, you forgot Corey. Where's Corey?
He's there somewhere, I'm pretty sure.
What did you do? Anyway, so my
Maybe
team.
He's not.
My team. I have 5 programmers helping me make, including me, Dungeons and Dragons. It's Dragons and Dungeons or Dungeons and Dragons.
I'm pretty sure it's Dungeons.
We should go faster. I should back off on the really lame jokes. So Corey Stoop, who's been with me since the beginning, since Ghostbusters, he takes care of all of my heavy lifting. All of the display work that's really difficult to do, and there's a lot of it in this game. All of those monsters and the very complex UI elements, that's all Corey. And then he's the dragon. He's all things dragon mechanical, dragon drivers and gelatinous cube drivers and so forth. So anything that I need like somebody heavy lifting to do, I push it off on Corey. Elizabeth Gieske is a rising star in our company. She's awesome. She's intelligent. She's fun. She's creative, and she took over most of the modes in the game, which was awesome. And then new on the team, new and Stern, is my son, David Sullivan. David Sullivan, he graduated from college, and this is his first job out of college, and his first full game is Dungeons and Dragons, and he's been doing lots of stuff on Dungeons and Dragons. And then, am I taking too long? I am.
Probably.
And then Tanya Kleiss has done lots of the save stuff, all of the save your progress stuff. That's all Tanya Kleiss.
There's absolutely people missing from this list too, like Corey already.
Right.
But I think the point is that there is a lot of people who make a game happen, not just us.
Correct. Let's talk about the art real fast.
Okay.
So Paul Chamatkit is my counterpart for the LCD art, and every single artist in Stern stepped up and wanted to, and brought their A game to work on this game. Then like 5 to 7 outside artists worked on this game. We have an amazing amount of art in the game, and it shows. Like if you guys watch the the LCD art, it's freaking amazing.
And it's still growing.
Yeah.
All right,
I'll go faster from now on, I promise.
That's important. Okay, so where do we start in making a pinball machine? I think I've used this slide 3 times now, but generally we get a license or define a theme. I always start with a blank playfield every time I start a game. I don't have anything preconceived. It's the theme that drives the game to me. And really, I think the first things we usually do is define the story, what the core experiences are going to be, what type of toys and shots that we want in the playfield. So that's, in the 3-step process, that's kind of it. So let's kind of dive into what that is, at least what it was on D&D. So concept development.
Yeah.
This is where Dwight and I start. We're given a theme, or we find a theme, and we just start talking about it.
Yeah, so we knew we needed a story early on, and Zach Pross and I sat. We didn't know how, we kind of invented it as we went along. In the beginning, we didn't know what the hell we were doing, and we had to fail a few times, Kimberly, before we got it right. Do you have any more slides?
That.
All right, let's. All right, so I'm not sure what you're showing here. You're showing here
this
sort
is
of
kind of the initial concepts.
Yeah,
we're trying to figure out how to tell a story.
Yep.
And
we knew we wanted sort of a choose your own adventure, and this is where I started making lots of drawings. You're about to see probably.
Oh yeah.
On the whiteboard, and so that's
kind of the grid layout on the right side. You'll see shades of what ended up in the real game.
Okay.
It's just trying to arrange it in a way and that would fit a pinball machine too.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of our biggest things is, well, how do you turn D&D, the complexity and the depth of it, into a 3-minute pinball experience?
Yeah, so I guess that's what this slide is about, is we knew that we wanted to, you walk up to the game and you choose a character, and that character is going to go on an adventure and live out some amount of story and work his way from the beginning to the end. And we wanted like 2 different kinds of beginnings and 3 different endings. And
you'll get to make choices along the way.
And choices, and the game's going to save your progress. And all these things are like sort of fell into place kind of naturally in the beginning.
So once we've talked about it and we've kind of done some research and stuff, I start playing with playfield stuff. This is a very early sketch that I happen to still have, and it's quite different than the game ended up, but there's still elements that you can see that are there, and we'll go through some of these here.
Wasn't this on the right side?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And this is kind of where it went from there. It went to this playfield, and this was closer to the first whitewood that we made. And we'll go through some of these elements here just so you can see where we started and where we ended up.
Go back. My part is that white thing in the middle. Right, see that white thing? That's my part.
Yep. And we'll get into that, too.
All right.
Okay, so this is thinking about mechs and stuff and, what's going to be the core elements that people who enjoy D&D or who don't know anything about D&D are going to have fun walking up to play the game. So the dragon, originally, he actually lived under an up-down ramp. So you can see on the left side over there where the big red dragon was on the playfield. Yep, you can see him. Okay, but he actually lived on a ramp that went up and down. But we got rid of that pretty soon on because we couldn't lift the ramp high enough to see the dragon well enough. I kind of wanted him to be hiding underneath and jumping out and attacking, kind of. But that didn't end up working well. So we moved the up-down ramp over to the left orbit that you see on the game now, and we put the dragon on top of the ramp. The dungeon concept, that stayed, but originally it actually was popped up and was going to catch 3 balls instead of just 1. The complexity and the weight of that and managing that and the cost of it we decided kind of got out of control, and we could still do pretty cool stuff with just the one.
Yep.
You know, and the idea of taking you down into the dungeon, I think that still rang true. And then the shield concept.
What's fun about the dungeon mech is it's one coil that raises it and sits there and holds and accepts the ball, and then when it's kicked really hard, it kicks the ball out.
Right. So it's not separate control or anything.
Yeah.
It fires and holds itself up, and then gives a quick fire to knock the ball out. Yeah. So it's a pretty clever device. And then the shield concept, I had always started with the shape that's kind of there.
Yeah. So Brian, so in the beginning, the thing you didn't talk about is, in the very beginning of a project, Brian usually disappears for 3 days to a week down into his sub basement.
Maybe a couple months. I don't know.
and then he comes out with these ideas. He comes out with these drawings, these thoughts. He came out with, like there's going to be a dragon and it's a battle and you fight the dragon and the player has a shield to defend himself and there's a dungeon and there's all this stuff. That's all Brian before we even start talking.
That's true, but then I bring it out and I show it to you and then you just tear it all apart.
No, well, some of it, maybe.
Maybe. But that's good. It gets us to a point that works. Okay, so what else do we have? The gelatinous cube, that stayed, part of it, pretty much the way it was, but originally, I don't know if you can tell from the crude sketches up there, but it actually had an up-down ramp in front of it.
Oh, I forgot all about that.
Yeah, that would pop up and allow you to go into the cube from the front, too. We kind of realized, I think at some point, again, cost and complexity. We actually had this mocked up at one point, but the cost and complexity of it wasn't worth what it was doing.
Right.
And since we can catch the ball, the idea was always to catch the ball underneath and on top.
In fact, that's another one of the brilliant ideas from the sub basement is catching the ball on the top and the below of the same magnet.
And it almost took the place of it. I mean, Dwight came up with, well, let's grab one on top and bottom for the multi-ball.
Right.
So that's what the ramp was
at the same time.
At the same time.
And then, of course, then Corey made all that work.
Right. And then there's one on the bottom here. This one didn't end up making it as a game, but it's a pretty cool concept, and I got some slides later of it. But we had a Mimic over on the left side. There's still a flat plastic of the Mimic, but it used to be an actual little mech.
Over the course of months, we have lots of discussions about cost and fun and what toys are needed, and if we had to cut things, what would we cut?
Yep.
And keeping the shield was always, important to me, so the Mimic had to go. So.
And it's all a balance of that. I usually start out with more things than we could actually put into it, because just like any business, we have a bill of material, and all of Stern's games try to match within that range that we have to hit.
Yeah.
So we have to make hard choices, but sometimes that's a really good thing, because it focuses the design and allows you to put the time into the devices that are going to be the most fun for people. And here's another piece that didn't end up making it the game. There used to be a castle tower, an upper mini playfield that sat above everything on the upper right-hand corner. And it had a little catwalk, the second picture. If you were able to get off of it, you could go onto the ramp that's still there, the right ramp, and land on it. But it had no sides to it, so it was going to be like a skill thing trying to get across the catwalk.
It was never going to work.
Dwight was convinced it wasn't going to work. I did almost mock this up in the first playfield, but let's see. So this is the playfield from the beginning there, so you can kind of see all the pieces together. The dragon was under the ramp at this point. There was 3 balls in the dungeon mech. There's an upper playfield and upper right. It's kind of hard to see because there's just lines everywhere. But this is AutoCAD, and this is kind of how we start with sketching.
My part's the white thing in the middle.
The white gray thing, yeah. With that layout changed too.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. So once I have all that, like I said, I bring it to Dwight, and then we start talking about it after he throws everything out. Then we start talking about it and what we're going to keep, and start talking about how we're going to structure the rules for all these devices and the things that go on. So the big one was story.
Yeah, so I knew that we needed a story, and I told Brian early on, and I don't think Brian completely believed me in the beginning, that we needed a story to pull modes from. We needed a story to so to make so that everything connected as you played it. And then after a day or two of me beating him over the head with that, he believed it. And then we got Zach Prost, which is Vince Prost's son.
Who did the artwork, Vince Prost.
Vince Prost is our artist, and he's awesome. His son, Zach, is also awesome, but he's a writer. And we started meeting...
And hardcore in the D&D. So
right.
He knew everything.
He was the perfect person to ask for this.
Yeah.
And he started... So... I'm still making this up as I go. I didn't know exactly what I needed, but so I'm just trying to figure it out. And as I was figuring it out, I told him, I said, look, these notes and these pages and Word docs and stuff you're giving me, it's not what I want. What I want is more like a flow chart, like with the thing that we showed you on the very first slide. And then so he started making a flow chart, and I thought he kind of understood because I gave him examples like you guys saw.
Right.
So you guys saw the examples I gave him, and then this is what he made.
It looks pretty simple, right? I mean, I think you guys could have picked up on it.
And this is the story. The story is huge. We cut tons of part out. Like that's Westgate over there on the right. How many people here have played D&D? How many people? Keep your hands up if you're familiar with. Just in general, you're familiar with the map.
Feyron.
Okay, so at the bottom of the map, there's Arabelle and Westgate, right? So those are up here. Arabelle is on the top, and Westgate's over here in the red. All those red squares and stuff, those are vampires that are not in the game. But, so do you have more slides? What do you got?
Yeah, I got more. And that one on the right side, that's just zooming into the purple dot in the upper left, just to show the complexity of every...
That's Arabelle.
Right.
Right, so Arabelle was going to be all of that stuff, and that... So this was huge, and 4 times more than we needed.
Right.
So I said, no, you don't get it. This is, I said, you don't get it. Like make the flow chart again, but like make it from the point of view of the player, and you're working your way, and this is what you're going to do. I thought I explained it to him correctly, and then he made these.
This looks much simpler, right?
Yeah. This is. And then I'm like, no. So then Brian and I got together. Do you have? Oh yeah, you got the next thing. Go the next one.
Next one. All right.
No, where are we?
You're probably out. You maybe want this one.
Oh, you don't have the one. Oh, well, all right. So yeah, go to the next one.
Yeah.
You don't need any of that.
Okay.
Okay. So the far right one, the right one is sort of what Brian and I made. And
that's what we ended up with.
Well, I know, but we made something similar to that. And so Zach and I were meeting like 2 or 3 times a week for 3 months about just writing story, and then I'm like, Brian, I need help. So then Brian then made a little sketch I don't see here. He made a sketch.
Right, I forgot about that sketch.
Yeah, he made a sketch similar to the one on the right.
Yeah.
And he said, look, Dwight, we just need, we have to, maybe we come at it from the opposite angle. We turn the whole thing on its head, and we decide what pinball things do we need, and then we pull from the story that's in Zach's head, and we create modes out of it, which is what we're trying to do from the first place anyway.
Yeah.
So then we created, well, the thing on the right is several evolutions down the road, but the thing on the right began with a drawing that Brian and I made, and we decided, well, you're going to work your way from the bottom to the top, and you can move around the map, and you can do stuff. And then it became the thing on the left eventually. So then I made the thing on the right, and then Zach and I made the thing on the left, where we just took his ideas from those giant flowcharts. And I said, Zach, forget about your giant flowchart for a minute. Like, here's Arabelle. What things are going to happen in Arabelle? And then what modes can we pull from that? And then how does it connect to the rest of the story? And then he and I hammered that out again across a few more months. And then we started filling in all of that. That's the whole story of the game, or maybe I don't know which slide exactly.
And it did all pull from the originals.
This, yeah. That's it. All pulled from that story. Yep. But we had to narrow it down.
Simplified, and it is actually a chunk of Feyron. And not exactly probably the layout, right? But it's generally
we took some small liberties, but I wanted it to be true because in 1985-ish, I started playing D&D, and then I formed a club in my small town of Belleville, and it was probably 84 maybe when I was like 19. I formed a D&D club in my town of Belleville. And I don't know why I'm telling you guys this, but I began my D&D career.
He's a huge D&D nerd.
I am. So I began my huge D&D. I can't. Where's the mouse? So is it on here? So there's this little town here in Faerun. It's right about where the mouse is. Can you guys see the mouse? You don't care. Nobody in the room cares. So I wanted to incorporate that, and I didn't succeed. I wanted like all of you guys to begin your pinball D&D careers the same place I did in 1984, and I didn't pull that off. I'm sorry. You guys are all disappointed, and you can go now. But
you can leave now, Dwight.
I still wanted to like start from the right, and you work your way toward the Sword Coast, and you were going to work your way toward Baldur's Gate, Neverwinter, and what's the third town? I'm forgetting. Watergate. No, Waterdeep. Yeah, that's it. Waterdeep, Baldur's Gate, and Neverwinter. And we didn't pull that off either, but we didn't need it.
No.
Right.
No. A lot of this to us was just reducing and refining from the complexity that we started with to get it in pinball form. And it took a lot of iterations because we wanted to pack so much into the game the whole time, but it became unwieldy, and I think we would have lost people. So we were really conscious of that, is to try to make it
from the beginning, it was very important to us that pinball wins. Anytime we have something on the whiteboard or something in our notes, that got too geeky, if it distracted from the pinball, then we cut it from the game.
Yep. And this is just more talking about the characters.
Yeah, that's trying to figure out who's doing what and what characters.
Yep. So a lot of these types of things, taking all those elements and trying to figure out how we put them into the game in a way that people can understand.
Yeah, and a lot of that's wrong. Nobody should look at that slide.
But this was part of the method we used along the way to figure it out.
So there's an online whiteboard. So COVID, of course, made us work from home. So then we turned to tools online, and the whiteboard really is cool because it's just endless whiteboard of sticky notes and lines and drawings and whatever you want to do. So it's really great at quickly showing whatever you got going on in your head.
Yeah. Dwight's really taking it to heart. And it is a great tool, a Lucid Spark, if anyone's curious, but it is a great tool. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the rules and the game and the features and stuff, so we need to make a whitewood at some point. So we were a little challenged in I think some of this, just getting off the ground with mechanical engineering. Stern's doing a lot of products at once, and they're trying to figure out where all the resources go. So we started with that first layout that you see on the left. It goes into SolidWorks. We got some of the main ball guides and some of the shots in. Usually our first whitewood is just to kind of test out the shots. Do they work? Do they not work? What do we need to adjust? We don't spend a lot of time getting all the mechs and stuff working. We just want to make sure the general flow is there that we want and that it works the way we want. Otherwise, we'd be designing mechs that we're going to change the whole playfield and wouldn't fit anyway. So usually that was the first whitewood. So that was our first whitewood.
Wait, and you can see the upper playfield.
Oh yeah, you can see the upper playfield, on this one. And here you can see us playing with the dragon, getting a sense of scale and size. The whole dragon himself was scaled around the size of a pinball.
Right. It's as small as it can be and spit out balls.
And still look like it's roughly in the right scale. Yeah.
So the one you see there actually is much smaller than the real thing.
Yeah. Yep. But it was a place to start to kind of get feel. But remember, in this one too, he was under the ramp at one point too.
Right.
So I think this one was a little smaller because of that.
Like we were going to break laws of physics. It was going to be gigantic and be under a ramp.
Exactly.
Right.
That was the hope. It didn't really work out, but. And you can see kind of the head that we started with over on the right. And these are quick mock-ups. It's really good to get things physically made in some way, printed or something, just so you can see them on the playfield. Because we work a lot in SolidWorks and software programs, right, to make this stuff happen. But until you actually make it, you don't really know.
Yeah, and the 3D printing has helped a lot in the last few years
tremendous.
To quickly figure things out.
Yep. So we had that working, so we had something to talk about with shots and stuff. And in the meantime, other parts of the project start coming on. So cabinet and backlash art. So this is where Vince Pros.
Yeah.
And Vince is an amazing guy. I worked with Vince about 20 years ago on a console game back at Midway Games, and I always thought he was an amazing talent. And over the 20 years, we'd occasionally see each other and talk and stuff, but we had this opportunity to do D&D, and just so happens Vince in his career had done Magic the Gathering cards and artwork for D&D himself.
Yeah. He was almost pre-approved by Watsy.
Right.
Watsy is Wizards of the Coast, who makes Dungeons and Dragons.
So it was amazing that I knew this guy who was an amazing talent, and he had done work already. So I was like, it's perfect. Yeah. We couldn't have asked for a better guy to do this. and he understands it. He understands the world of D&D and what the Wizards of the Coast need. So he started out doing sketches. Some of these we didn't end up using, right?
Well, the artist did. So this is a Brood UNT and a Malison UNT, and then Sam Masters on the front, right?
Some of the characters he started playing with.
Who knows any of the names? Raise your hand if you know these names. Wow, look at that. One person does. That's awesome. I've found out the B0. A Bugbear, Balinor, who looks like Buzz Lightyear's dad, but I was okay with that. And then Diego.
Yeah, Diego. Diego changed a little bit.
Yeah, and his last name is going to be Stormbeard or Stonebeard, and I think today it's Stormbeard.
Storm, I think,
No, it's Stormbeard. Wait, shit, what is it? I don't know.
But he's an amazing artist, right? He draws all this stuff, and these are all sketch form of him, right, with pen or pencil and paper. And then I think he brings it into to Photoshop and stuff and manipulates it.
The story is the story is coming a long way at this point.
Right.
And Vince is listening to his son and myself and Brian or whoever and drawing things that are going to be in the story.
Yeah, so if you actually look at the game and you look at the art packages, all the characters and elements that are on those,
all the scenes
are in the game because they were driven from the story.
Yeah.
So it's a really cohesive packet in that way.
It's a small detail, but it's important.
Yeah, it's important. And him working with his son too, I think, was a great. Helped facilitate that whole thing. What else we have? We have a few more characters.
So Lysandra is there on the left. She's a badass.
Yeah. A couple more.
You're being attacked by an owlbear.
Right. Have you heard that before? So he did a bunch of sketches to start with, and then it's time, okay, we got to start working on the backlash. So this is a really early iteration.
And I was afraid.
Yeah. This one was a bit messy. There were some elements we liked, but a lot of it we didn't. But that's kind of, you need something to start with. He's got to get something down on paper, and then we can start fine-tuning from there. So that moved on to a pencil sketch. This one's much closer to where we ended up.
And all of that is elements from the game, except for Waterdeep. Well, Waterdeep was going to play a bigger role, but we cut it from the story, and it's in the back-hand side there, back right corner.
That did change a little bit. I know, and keep in mind that all this stuff with the licensor has to be approved for the licensor. So there's gates along the way. One of them is this black and white sketch before they move on to color.
And we didn't have the Tyrant Side then yet either.
No. Yeah,
we were deciding whether or not what the tagline should be, and that was a huge discussion for a while.
Yeah. So Vince would do color studies initially just to kind of get a feel for it so that people can have some vision of where he's going. Obviously not final, and you can see the characters don't look exactly the same as they ended up. Actually, your choosable characters, right? We changed them too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a Wizards of the Coast request.
In general, Wizards of the Coast was awesome to work with.
Yeah, they were.
Like, more than in general. Like,
they
pretty much
one of the best licensors we had.
They let us do whatever the hell we wanted to. All they wanted to do was protect, like if we didn't draw our dragon correctly, they said, no, the dragon has to be correct, or this or that has to be correct.
Had that right number of scales.
But otherwise, we could do whatever we wanted.
Right. Yeah, they were really good. And they really wanted us to make a pinball form of D&D, not to like duplicate D&D.
Which is what I wanted to do too, yeah.
Yeah, so we were online, and they make games, we make games, so I think they got it at some level.
Yeah, and D&D works well as because everybody playing D&D out there today is playing some homegrown story that they've made up, right? So we just did the same thing.
Right, in a pinball form.
Yeah.
So I'll just go through these somewhat quickly. These are some early sketches. So some of the sketches we started with didn't actually end up on the cabinet. We used them for different places, or we scrapped them all together. Like this is a pro cabinet side art that we didn't actually end up using. And the one on the right is closer to what we ended up using in the black and white. And this is the premium's backlash, the pencil sketch.
And that's still the fighter there is in the front, which changed to a Dragonborn.
Yep, so there's small details that we changed along the way, either our choice, because the story changed, or Wizards of the Coast said, hey, why don't you guys use one of these? And we were pretty amenable to all that, too. Here again is the premium cabinet side that didn't actually end up being the premium side, the one on the left there, that ended up on the LE.
That's the pro. That's
No, I thought that was the other side of the LE.
The other side of the LE is Xanathar busting through the wall and blasting everybody with his rays.
Yeah, I think that's where this started.
This is the Pro today.
The cabinet?
Yeah, the Pro cabinet today.
Okay.
It's, from the left-hand side is. Trust me.
And then this is an early LE one.
Yeah.
And this one it was amazing amount of stuff in it, but it was just too much stuff.
And Vince drew that like in a day.
Maybe a day and a half.
Yeah.
So it was a little hard to understand what exactly was going on. So I think this is the one that probably changed the most, simplifying it and defining it
Yeah.
a little bit tighter. See, that's the...
This is the premium. The Xanathar is busting through the wall. The premium is...
Yeah. So that changed from
Or
where
this is
it
the
was.
LE now.
Yeah.
Is this the LE?
This is the LE.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I was right. Of course I'm right.
The premium is the aerial combat.
Yes, with the dragons.
The two dragons, yeah.
The gold and red
But
dragons.
the Xanathar on the left, facing the right, is the Pro. So I was right too. This is the way our whole life goes.
Pretty much.
Since Mandalorian, Venom, and now Dungeons and Dragons for years, this is my life.
You're welcome.
I am thankful.
Okay, so more rules. So we got some art, we got some playfield started, and now we're kind of diving in. We're kind of trying to think of what the architecture will roughly be.
Yeah.
Like we knew we had toys like the dragon, gelatinous cube, and the dungeon, and we kind of wanted them to be self-contained. So anybody could play up, you could go into those modes, have cool stuff happen anytime. But then we had the whole story mode.
Yeah, the map.
With the map.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then early on we wanted to, you're going to wander around the map sort of like a small little sandbox, right? Like a tiny little, like you can wander around the map and do whatever you want. And we knew we wanted that, and we kind of pulled that off.
Yeah, we did. We kept simplifying it. It used to be even more open, I think, but it was too hard to understand. Mm-hmm. Especially when you're trying to tell a story, too. And then we kind of talked about how will the two mix together, the story modes versus the main mechs, and a lot of that was we have to play the game. We have to see, do we want anything to stack on top of each other? Do we want them all to be separate? Do we want to use some of the mechs in some of the story modes, which we do?
Yeah.
So it's
and we knew we were always going to have a red dragon, and so we wrote the red dragon into the story. There's a whole subplot of the story where there's the Tiamat, the evil queen, wants these 5 chosen dragons, and the red dragon is one of the 5, and is constantly trying to prove his worth.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But I think a lot of our time at this beginning was just constantly reducing scope for complexity, and so that people can understand it. We also talked a lot about Insider Connected, because our previous game was Venom, which we kind of pushed the Insider features of saving games, saving your progress so you can continue. And D&D was a perfect natural for that. It's like you want to continue your adventure. You want to get to the end.
I didn't make lots and lots of spreadsheets, did I?
Well, you might have.
Okay.
I'm not saying they're in this presentation or anything, but Dwight did make lots of spreadsheets.
I did.
Dwight loves spreadsheets.
I love to be organized.
Yes, and it's needed for this game too, because all the stuff under the hood is real D&D.
It is.
And
so
Dwight made sure it was.
Everything going on, all of the rules of D&D are in the game. All of the player's handbook and the Dungeon Master Guide, the tables. The game actually rolls dice underneath whenever it's needed, and everything happening in the game is just like it would if you were playing a tabletop, with some small exceptions, but yeah.
So this is also...
Every DM is allowed to make some exceptions.
So this is a time when we start talking about inserts too in the layout. Since we have a rough idea of what we want the rules to be, we lay out a printout and we just start playing with shapes. And like, how are we going to tell the story? How are we going to... let people know how close they are to a dragon battle or the gelatinous cube and such.
Where's the dungeon? It's not in that drawing.
The dungeon.
Oh, it's the 3 thing.
It's the 3 bank still at this point.
And it's further down. It's further up the playfield.
Back. Yeah. So a lot of small things like that move around and change as we talk through things.
And there's no upper playfield here.
No.
And the dragon has moved in this one, or is that still? Is the
no,
dragon,
that's still the old dragon place. Yeah. So this is like the first early on talking about layout. And this one we threw the dragon in there for inspiration because that never hurts, right? To talk about it. Okay, here's some spreadsheets. See,
that's just one.
That's one.
All right. So
Also the monsters, I think, right?
Yeah, that's so we have a lot of monsters in the game. In fact, is this an older spreadsheet? I can't tell. It's slightly older. We have
probably.
a lot of monsters in the game that you can fight, and they all have the actual stats from the game. And I learned Python for this. I kind of knew Python before. Python's a coding language, more than you want to know. But basically, at a high level, I take this spreadsheet and I save it to a CSV file, and then I run it through a tool that I wrote, and then the tool generates C++ code for me that I just plug into the game. So then all of this just gets plugged into the game, and all those numbers decide how fast the monsters attack and how fast they replenish themselves, and all of the details of a monster, how much gold they carry around when you loot them, and so forth, and how hard they hit when they hit you, and how often they hit, is all in that table for all of the monsters, and it's pretty fucking awesome.
So it's not just a pretty spreadsheet; it's actually directly into the game.
Yeah, that spreadsheet becomes code that's in the game, and all I have to do is push a few buttons to make that happen.
Yeah, that's just pretty cool. And yet some more spreadsheets.
So early on in the beginning, my son wrote, we were gonna allow you to create your own character, and you were gonna have different bonuses depending on what race you picked.
Right.
And it's not race anymore, it's called species. And so depending on what species you picked or what class you picked, you would have different bonuses. And then we scrapped all that because it became simpler to do the art, for one, and simpler to do because the art's a budget as well, just like the mechanics. So the art's a budget, and then it became more fun to have 8 characters that we know, and those 8 characters have a backstory and their own speech and everything, and that's the path we ended up going on.
Right, yeah, I forgot. We did start out with create your characters.
Right, and creating your character would have been 128 different characters.
Right.
So that was too many.
And again, complex for a person to jump into a play, so.
Right.
What other spreadsheets we got? This is more of the characters trying to define what's unique about each one.
Well, this is all the different things that you can get in the game. Oh, this is actually an old spreadsheet. This is me. So I was going to have, like, one of the things all the characters were going to have were belongings, because that was a big part of D&D. Again, we kept cutting things from the game if it didn't help the pinball game. And so all of that, the bottom half of that is what was important here, and none of that was important. We turned that into the shots. Every single shot has a little piece of equipment that you can collect along the way. Every time you make a shot, you collect rope or iron spikes or a machete and so forth, and that's what this spreadsheet became, that rule.
Yep. And don't worry, there's only 37 more spreadsheets.
What is that?
Again, it's all the characters.
I think this is a Tanya spreadsheet. Yeah, so that's a spreadsheet with Tanya trying to figure out, because all of the characters are animated when they're on the screen, and they're not just static PNG poses. They're sitting there doing several different animations, and we use a spine engine for that. And by the way, the crash that we had like a week ago where the wizard would sometimes crash was art crashing the game. It's very, very rare that art crashes the game, but that was the case.
Oh.
And this is Tanya figuring out how we're gonna. I didn't make that one.
That wasn't yours?
I don't think so. I don't recognize it.
I don't know. All right, no more spreadsheets.
All right, good. Is that my drawing?
So you would think.
Oh, that's your drawing.
You would think this is Dwight's, right? If anybody's been to our talks before, Dwight usually has some great artwork in this presentation.
Well,
but this one's actually mine.
Yeah.
I think I one-upped you a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Mine's not quite that neat.
Yeah. So this is Tiny's Tavern, right? And the rule that ended up being attached to the whole buckshot up the center. Okay, so playfield. So we're back with Vince, right? So now that we've defined more of the rules and kind of trying to understand the game a little bit better, Vince needs to eventually start on the playfield and the layout. This kind of came a little bit later, but this was a good part in the presentation to put it in. So and this is Vince's first pinball. So somebody doing a pinball for the first time who doesn't understand the history and the depth of pinball, you kind of got to teach them a lot about what it is and what's important and visually and calling out the shots and the patterns and stuff. So we spent some time, doing up a bunch of different documentations that we sent to him so he'd understand it, which eventually led to the pencil sketch on the right.
And shout out to Greg Ferris, who was our art director at the time, and really and knows what it's like to have a new artist, and it really helped us help. It helped us help it helped us teach Vince what pinball is all about.
Yeah. And I think in the end, with all those elements coming together, he did an amazing job on the playfield.
Yeah,
so
he did.
For a first-time artist on a playfield, is the toughest part, the playfield, for them to do, because it ties in so tightly with the game. And that ended up, this is an early color of the playfield that he did. It's not the final one, but again, he's putting color to it to kind of get a feel for what it's going to look like and how to define the shot paths and such. So there's lots of other stuff going on too during all this. It's not just the playfield and spreadsheets. Music, and sound.
Chris.
Yep. So Jerry Thompson, who's done how many games of yours?
Jerry came to me
Stern, a lot.
Right. Well, with Stern a lot, but he started with me, and he's always been my sound guy for every single one of my games. Him and Corey and I are a team, and we've been doing all our games forever. We started on Ghostbusters, I think.
Yeah. So I knew Chris Velasco from a project in the past, and console game that I did, and he did an amazing sound, a very big, epic sound. All his music was that way. And again, I hadn't talked to him in, 20 years either, just like Vince. But even Vince, at least I kept up with. But Chris, I hadn't talked to in a long time. But so I found him and contacted him, and he's had an amazing career too. He's done so many huge games, Mass Effects.
If you have a minute, Google him, and you'll see just how great he is.
God of War. His music.
Dozens of video games you've probably played.
Yep, there's won awards and tons of awards, and his website just has probably 50 or so games that he worked on. It's just a small amount. But he had never done a pinball either, so he was kind of actually excited to do a pinball.
Yeah.
Because it was something new for him to do, and he loved D&D. He loved the theme. So we got lucky and were able to get him to work on a pinball.
It's a reoccurring theme. Whenever we contacted people and we told them what we were working on, they were excited. Everyone stepped up and brought in their A game and we're like, D&D pinball, I'm in.
Yeah, they wanted to be part of it.
Yeah.
That helped a lot along the way. So we're writing speech and getting that recorded. It actually happened pretty late in this game, I think.
Yep.
Probably really late, November, December.
December. December's when we recorded it all.
Yeah,
we were writing it in October.
Yep. And Jerry has to take the insane amount of work and get it into the game.
It's thousands of lines of speech.
Thousands.
It's
probably the most speech in the game.
There's a lot of speech in this game.
Yeah, and then we had writers that wrote some of the script. We wrote some of it.
Yeah, I've been saying this since the beginning, but it's the most ambitious project I've ever done.
Yeah.
It's surpassing Star Wars. Star Wars was my previous very large epic game, and this is bigger in many ways.
Yeah, and hopefully you guys see that. We also got, this was again toward the end, Jody managed to get us an amazing cast of voice talent. And I think that really makes the speech come alive, too, is you got to have that. We got Matt Mercer as a DM, so anybody who's into D&D, they know who he is. And if you're not into D&D, he's a great voice.
Yeah, he's been in lots of things. He was in lots of video games. He's been in lots of, they're all voiceover talents that have been in lots of things that you might have heard of. And raise your hand if you know Critical Role.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, handful.
So some people...
Awesome.
That's
so
true.
Matt Mercer, Laura Bailey, and Marisha Ray are three of the members of Critical Role, Vox Machina and so forth, and they're in our game, and they really help make the game great, along with everybody else.
Yeah, and then the random people like Michael Dorn, right?
Right.
And Luke Gygax.
Well, we know we needed, right from the beginning, we were, the dragon voice had to be somebody special.
Strong.
Right.
Yeah.
And we had a few people we were thinking about, and Michael Dorn is the one that pulled it off.
Up. Yep, he did great. But yeah, an amazing cast of people. Kevin Smith, Gerald Way. It's crazy. And they were all incredible.
Yeah.
I think probably the easiest reads we've had. They just got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so other things. We're doing test fixtures to test all sorts of the games. I didn't have too many pictures of test fixtures, but we did ones for the Dungeon, the Shield, for even the center Vuck, onto the ramp and making sure that survives for hundreds of thousands of hits. We had a lot of different tests for the Dragon, shooting balls in different directions, straight on, just moving around. Actually, I think this one will move a little bit. Tests that just focused on him moving. So we did a lot of work on the Dragon throughout the whole project.
Yeah.
And then a really huge one, which I'm not going to do justice. I think Paul could do a whole talk on just how the art was created, the video art was created in the game.
And because right off the bat, I wanted to do something I had never done before. We wanted to, because there's tons of battles, right? So like every time you turn around, you're fighting a different monster. And we had to figure out, well, how did we get all of this in the game and get it done on time and on budget? And so we came down to, in order to do each battle, they sort of had to follow a pattern. Like there's a background, and then there's a monster, and then there's the UI, and if we sort of follow these patterns, then Paul could get it done. But we still had that entire list of monsters to do. So he had a pipeline of artists like doing like sketches and then painting and then animations and then putting and then turning it into a place where the code people can do it, and then Corey puts it in the game. So it's one after the other, and it was a lot of work. And then we have all these backgrounds, all of the different locations you can move around on the map, and the different dungeon levels. They all have a different background where you can fight monsters, and they all animate. They all are tiny little movies with subtle little brilliant, beautiful detail, and Paul did all that along with an army of artists.
Yeah, I'm pretty safe to say that D&D has more hand-created art than any other Stern game, right?
I think so.
I think so too. Yeah. And again, Wizard of the Coast had to prove all this stuff too. They had to make sure it was on par with what they expected out of it. So one of the things that you usually start on, this is Dwight's pretty image. It's probably not up to date, but it's one of the earlier ones.
It's my first take on, hey guys, this is what I want to see in the UI, and all of the different, what we need for the UI. And then Paul would take this and turn it into turn it into that. So, like Dwight art and then real art is back and forth.
And this went through a lot of iterations.
It did.
All the way up to George and Seth, I think.
Yeah.
We didn't want it to be too complex, but we wanted it to feel D&D too.
Yeah.
So that was a tough balance.
And it was like, what era RPG video game are we copying?
Right. Is it the 90s
the 90s,
style?
the zeros, the 10s, and we aimed at more modern games like Baldur's Gate 3, because Baldur's Gate 3 came out right as we were developing all this,
right.
And we're like, well, we should learn a lot from that,
Yep. And other things, right? There's the story modes.
Yeah.
All have storyboards.
There's over 130 cutscenes in the game.
That's crazy.
All right, so think about that for a second. 130 cutscenes that are all drawn and all animate or sort of animate, and then there's Matt Mercer's voiceover on top of all of that. That all has to get written. It's a lot of work. The game is a beast.
It is a beast. And then there's just the regular stuff in the game, like Gelatinous Cube outside of the story, right? And replay and
Dragon Multi-Ball and Dungeon Crawl. Oh, Dungeon Crawl.
Yep, they all need.
We have slides for Dungeon Crawl? Maybe not.
No, I do not. But you're right, I didn't.
So Dungeon Crawl procedurally generated. That was another thing I've been wanting to do. Ooh, wow.
Uh-oh.
Who is that mysterious lady? Oh, no, shit. 20!
Sorry, Dwight, 7.
It's a 7? Damn it.
Okay, so backgrounds, as Dwight was talking, right? They're all first done in pencil and then brought into color.
And then animated.
Yep. And if we watch close, you can see the smoke and little embers and stuff. Yeah. So every background had this treatment.
Yeah.
And it's pretty incredible. Is this a spoiler? Is this in the game?
No, that's Gotham. You can travel there.
Okay, you can travel there now. Gotham was the first one. Yeah. And
that's a spoiler, but that's okay.
That's a spoiler.
I
wanted to put one spoiler in.
That's fine. that's not in the game yet. So, and I'm not going to spoil it, but this is a cool scene where the red dragon and the gold dragon are fighting, and you are fighting. It's the Battle of Gotham is the name of the mode, and it's one of the wizard modes that's yet to come. And you are fighting in this battle, and the dragons are fighting alongside you. Cool, huh? Right? Yeah.
Everybody's excited.
All right, I don't have my glasses on. I think they're all smiling. Oh shit.
Okay, so all that stuff's going on, and we need to do another Whitewood. Some games you get 3 Whitewoods, maybe. I think we only ended up getting 2 in the end. So it was a little more challenging.
Depends on how you count.
It depends on how you count.
Yeah.
2.5 maybe.
Yeah.
You can see on the left side there, that's the SolidWorks version where we were at the playfield. And then the middle is it getting built up for real. And the right side, you can see an early version of the giant dragon kind of taking over the playfield.
Yeah.
I'll have some more on that.
There's no more ramp.
There's no more ramp.
Well, the up-down ramp moved to the left.
It moved to the left at this point.
Yeah.
We had moved it already. Now that we know a little bit more about what's on the playfield, Vince continued to fine-tune the pencil, and I think this is pretty close to the final pencil on the game, besides a few minor details, which then he took to color. And again, all this is going on at the same time, so as we come up with new things or change things, we got to go back and have Vince, can you change this? Can you change that? And Vince doesn't like changes.
Well, but Greg was good at wrangling them.
He was, yeah. So here I'll go into a little bit of mechs and sculpts. So we had the playfield, we had the shots, we had some ramps out, but we didn't necessarily have the mechs on the beginning of the second playfield. So this was some of the initial work on the mechs, is trying to figure out, well, how are we going to make a dragon move left and right, up and down over that whole swath of the playfield, and how are we going to position the dragon on it. So these were kind of the mock-ups within SolidWorks. You can see it's a full dragon that was on the playfield.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the size we were aiming for, that was close to the scale of a pinball coming out of his mouth. So keep that in mind. And there'll be a little bit more on that in a bit. And then all the other ones, like Gelatinous Cube, right? We got that working inside SolidWorks for how the size it was going to be. The dungeon popping up. It's a really early iteration of it. Originally, it had a flap on top, kind of like Trolls from Medieval. But that didn't end up working really well in this game. It diverted the ball off path too much, no matter what we did.
Technology's improved since Trolls.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
And we had a very sensitive shot up the center that if it was veered off, it was really hard to shoot that center buck.
Yeah.
So we went with a different design in the end. The Mimic, which is really interesting, on the right side, I'll show you that in a second. And of course the shield that pops up, which stayed. And you can see the shape there already changing from the big glob that was on
And for the most part, these are all still Brian's ideas from the sub-basement.
Yes. Yeah, refined and changed and moved and all that stuff.
But massaged. Yeah.
So there was a Mimic, as I mentioned, over on the left-hand side of the playfield where that plastic is now, and it was actually a toy. This was a really early prototype of it. I think it actually works. So it could open up and reveal treasure, or it could open up and reveal a Mimic. And you didn't know what it was going to be. Right? It was a little motor inside, a little servo motor. It was actually really fun. And then sculptures, right? Sculpts have a really long lead time. We make them overseas usually, and it just takes a long time. So we have to be really far ahead in mechanical design and lock it down to be able to do the sculpts. So we got the Gelatinous Cube going. You can see on the bottom there it is in SolidWorks, and on top is actually a decorated sample. And same with the dragon, right? He's modeled, his head is very detailed, have to get approved through the licensor, all that stuff, before we can actually send it off to get molded. And the bottom is a sample painted one too. So the dragon, as I mentioned, he was a big dragon. He took up a lot of the playfield, and he looked like a fierce dragon. You can see on that bottom left one, we wanted on top of that ramp, crouched down,
protecting his gold. Yeah.
Yeah, protecting his gold and ready
falling over the game.
Yep, and it looked really cool. Here's some shots of the various mock-ups that we did. 3D prints of the whole body, and then some of the heads, the pathway along with the heads. We did a lot of iterations of them. There's a whole pile of them that kind of left over from the end of trying to fit the right size and get it to look right.
And then we threw it out.
And then we threw it all out. Yeah. And here's a very rare picture of it kind of just assembled. Yeah. The dragon ended up in this one a lot bigger than what our earlier versions were. Yeah. So he would have had to been reduced 30% for it, which we were ready to do, but careful with those dragons. They're really tough to wrangle.
Right. And we decided that he took up too much space and covered up too much of the playfield, and then didn't move or was interactive.
Yeah.
And then
there was a bunch of things, right? We were running late in the project at the time. The game was pretty expensive at the time, and we still didn't have the final dragon. So, George came to us and we talked it through a bunch, and he said, okay, well, we have to take some stuff out. So at one point we took the Mimic out, which he didn't, it still isn't in the game.
the shield.
But we took the shield out for a while.
Oh, it was
right?
gone for a while.
We did take it out, and Dwight was really upset. He was sad. He barely talked for like 2 weeks.
Which was a good thing, probably, because I got work done.
That's true. And we tried to remove things from the game that didn't have an impact on fun. That's generally what we try. What has the most fun in the game, let's try to keep that. And the dragon moving and spitting out balls and holding them and being in a battle was important. So the bill of material was still high. The dragon sculpt, actually, because it was so big, ended up being really costly to mold.
Right.
We don't 3D print anything. Everything at Stern is actually molded solid products that'll last, the life of the game. And we've never done something that big, that molded. So sending it out and getting quotes, it was multiple pieces. The wings were separate from the body and the tail and the feet and everything, and it was put together. It ended up causing a lot of problems. Plus, we had the unknowns of there's a bunch of ball hang-ups right between his wings, a lot of things that we would have to solve to get it done. And George came to us, and George wasn't happy. He didn't like because it blocked some of the shot paths in the back, which is kind of cool to see, the shot paths. And Thomas, I think, our mechanical engineer, he's the guy who kind of came up, well, dragons live in caves.
Right.
So we could just make it a cave. So in that moment, I really hated Thomas because the original vision of a full dragon was gone, and he was actually right.
But I get my shield back.
And yeah, dragons live in caves. George said, okay, that's a solution. Let's do that. And then Dwight said, well, do we get our shield back? And he says, yes, you can have the shield back. Because we didn't have to pay for this big plastic molded piece that was decorated. So we were able to take some of that money back. So in the end, I think that was a good decision because it gave back a mechanical feature that the players can use in the game. But we were still in a bind because now we almost were done with the body. We're probably going to scale it and get it decorated. And we still didn't have a cave. So we had to do a cave. So George, being George.
Yeah. In a weekend.
In a weekend, he came in and says, I'll make you a cave. I can do this in my sleep. I've made things like that all the time. So he came in one weekend, and I think this was out of wood, right? That he just started chipping away in the upper left-hand corner with the sizes on the playfield and made one that fit over the dragon.
At the beginning, it's just the beginning,
at the beginning of it. And we went through a bunch of iterations to get rid of ball hang-ups and such on it, but it was something that we could contain and we could see and we could do it quickly, iterate on it. So you can see as it evolved and looking at it in the game, in the upper right-hand side, we digitized it, brought it into SolidWorks, and smoothed it over on the bottom right to its final one.
That's what we should put George's credits in the credits. George, God of Caves.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Instead of,
so George definitely saved the day on that one, which was really cool that he put in the time.
That's his job.
To make it work. Yep. He does little stuff like that on every project. He'll come in and help out on, which is great to have George as a resource to be able to do those things. And here's some of the play fields as they're farther along in SolidWorks on the left. You can see there's the big dragon in the middle, and then what we ended up with, the dragon in the cave. And you can see a lot more of the play field.
Yeah.
I still think there should be a director's cut with a giant dragon that everybody could buy, but
right.
We'll know.
And they have to give up the shield.
Right. Well, you get to keep the shield.
Well, right, in the director's cut.
Right, in the director's cut. Right. Yeah. So tell George you want a big dragon.
In the Super LE.
In the Super LE. Right. Okay, so then we're at this point, we've got the rules refined enough, at least to make an instruction card.
Yeah.
They're not all figured out, but.
Yeah, but they're coming along pretty good.
Pretty good.
We know what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. There's some fine details we're not sure about. But.
Yep, and we're still working on those.
Yeah.
We're still balancing and still putting content into the game.
Lots of content still coming.
Yep. So finally we get to the physical game where all these pieces that we've been working on for a year or so are starting to come together, and we're building the final physical game.
August of 22 is when we first started this.
Yeah, started thinking about it. And these are the first games we did. These are the photo shoot games. We made the cabinets in our lab, not on the line, and the play field. On the left, you can see it being built up. So these were the very first games we made to kind of prove out things.
And we use those for photo shoot?
Yep, those are actually the photo shoot cabinets. And then, of course, once that's all proved out, we get to the production line, and there's just a couple photos from them. As they start on the line on the left there, and the center, that's the first built-up playfield from the line that we had. Over on the right-hand side, I thought these are cool. These are playfield protectors they use. They're thick rubber. They're like a half-inch thick.
For every single game.
Every single game as it's going down the line. so that when they solder or put mechs on, it doesn't scratch up the playfield.
And then they can just set tools and stuff on top of it.
Yeah,
It doesn't hurt
and
the
it
game.
has Dungeons and Dragons. I thought that was cool. That was nice. And this is the final game. On the left, that was the first game that they made. That's actually Thomas. He's not wearing his
You have a
kilt.
picture of him.
Yeah, well.
Oh, yeah, he's got a kilt on. You just can't see it.
You can't see it. I think
Yeah.
that's it. Yeah. So that obviously everybody's involved in the mechanical side, going out there, making sure they're putting it together right. We spent a lot of time with everybody building on a line to make sure they're building the parts right. And on the right side, you can see there's a whole line of them. Once they start moving on the line, they're coming down, so you want to make sure it's correct. And then here's those 3 cabinets. I think those were the photo shoot cabinets. I think this was from our first stream.
Yeah.
One of our streams that we had set up the games. And that's pretty much it. That made it to the end. Whew. Okay. So we can take some questions.
It was a beast of a game.
It was a
We
beast.
have dressed up people in the audience.
Yes.
That's
Yeah. So anybody have any questions or, yep, go ahead.
Well, right now we're on 0.88, so you're going to get all the way to 1.0.
And probably beyond.
Yeah,
So,
you're going to get code
yeah.
updates every time I release some new thing.
Yeah. There's still quite a bit to go into the game, like a couple of endings aren't
Yeah,
there.
there's 3 main wizard modes to go,
Yeah.
plus a couple other kind of major features.
Yep. What was that?
Please stand up and talk loud.
What was it? Oh.
Yes.
Okay, can you elaborate?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Hope that answers your question. That's a great idea.
So, I've been maybe breaking a rule. We are starting work on a strategy guide. So we make a book like this for every game. We did one for Venom. I've done one for other games. It's going to be a PDF of rules and art and strategy that Brian and I come up with.
Which you can actually, if you scan that code, it's not there yet.
It's not there yet.
But that code will take you right to it on the instruction card.
Just like we did on Venom.
Yep. Anybody else?
Is there a...
Like more hardcore?
No.
Not at this point.
We made decisions like...
Number of attributes on a character, right?
Right. So there's character generation could get really, really complex. And we cut all that out so that, because it just doesn't make sense for 99% of the pinball players. And that, so since we cut it out, it's not in the game and can't be used. But everything that is in the game that's kind of geeky if it's not already used, it will be used in some small, subtle way, and that'll all be laid out in the strategy guide.
And it is all true to D&D.
Yeah,
so,
your strength, your dexterity, your intelligence, those all play a small role in your game. And when you're choosing what character to play, it will make a subtle difference in what you choose.
And even the characters that pop up, you roll a dice to get all of their dexterity. and all
Yeah,
this
yeah,
stuff.
those
It's correctly done.
Right, and that was something we didn't really cover is the game is something I've been wanting to do for a long time is procedurally generated games. The game is, and I don't know, I'm not using that term correctly, and I don't care, but everything in the game is not random. There's almost no randomness actually in the game. Everything that could be random is generated ahead of time on Sunday, and then all that week it stays exactly the same. So like that's the character stats. All your character stats of your new character are the same all week long, and then change on Sunday. The dungeon crawl feature is the easiest place to see this non-random state, is because all week long the dungeon's exactly the same, and then it changes on Sunday. But everything else in the game, like where Physmo sells different things on the map, changes every week and stays the same the whole week long. I think it's working pretty well. I was really nervous about it. I've been wanting to do it for years, and finally I said, this is a good game to put this idea I've had for a long time on, and it's working out pretty good.
There's a lot of small details in the game like that. I think that people, as you play it more and more, you're gonna see those and find them.
Yeah.
Okay.
As long as you were logged in when you pick the character.
Yeah.
So if you log into Insider Connected and play, your next game will pick up right where you left off.
Yep, and that same city that you're at and everything.
On your very first play, the left flipper button changes where you start, and then after that, you're always where you left off on the map. And your progress is always, behind you. You'll never, as you work your way toward the end of the game, you'll never play a mode twice.
For that character.
For that character.
Yeah, so each character has its own.
Yeah, there's 4 different characters, all individually saved, and you can choose what order you play them in.
Oh, yeah. Is it on? Hang on.
Yeah, there we go.
There
Using
you
the
go.
mic.
All right.
Had it for 2 weeks. Love it. Absolutely love it. Already unlocked the Bard. Hungry for more. Saw in a lot of the spreadsheets lots of characters. Which of those are hitting the cutting room floor? I saw druids, and I know that there's 3: the barbarian and the ranger.
Those are all in the game.
Yep.
So all of them are all 8 are eventually gonna make their way in the game.
I think there's 7.
There's
right?
there's currently 7 that you can play and
Gotcha.
pick from.
So you can currently unlock the
Druid, the ranger, and the barbarian.
How?
Oh, no, you not currently. No. In the
Okay,
design.
gotcha.
In the
That's what I was
design.
saying. Yeah.
Yeah, in the .88 code, no. But
Okay. But eventually, all those that you listed up there.
Yeah, as you, when it's all done, you'll work your way toward either one of 2.
Let me see. I think it's
that one.
The other 2.
You work your way toward either Gauntlgrim on the right, the Battle of Gauntlgrim, which isn't in the game, with the dragons fighting each other,
Yeah.
or the Lich of Dragonsburg Castle. And then when you go down to the Lich of Dragonsburg Castle, you're given a prompt. Mm-hmm. Do you want to stay and finish off the Lich, or do you want to chase after the Scepter of the Tyrant's Eye?
Yeah.
And then that choice decides which of 2 endings you go play eventually when they're all done. And then the other battle decides, you'll get a similar prompt, and you'll decide one of 2 endings. And between all of that, and you'll play 3 different endings, and each of the 3 different endings unlocks a character if you win it.
Yeah.
Unlocks the ranger, the druid, and the barbarian.
Awesome.
The druid, the barbarian, the ranger, and the barbarian in that order.
Very cool. Because I didn't think I saw a druid on the playfield. The other ones had images, so I wasn't sure if it got cut or something.
No, the druid is what you get for Ritual of the Chosen. It's
Gotcha.
it's the only one that you can unlock today.
Gotcha. It's not the bard?
Correct. It's not a druid. Jesus
right.
Christ.
Yes.
You're right.
It was a druid for a long time, and we cut the druid out.
Yes.
That's where I was getting confused.
Yep.
So
Yes,
I think we're all on the same
yes.
page.
So early on, I decided I can't use a bard, and then I figured out how, and then I couldn't figure out how to use the druid, so we swapped the druid and the bard. Sorry about that.
But that's a good point too. We picked characters that were more pinball.
Yeah.
That could make something that worked with pinball.
Right. Druids are all about changing who they are as like from the movie, becoming an owlbear, becoming a deer, becoming whatever. And I didn't know how to fit that into pinball.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Been loving the game so far. I just wanted to put a continuation to a question this gentleman asked earlier about the characters being saved to Insider Connected. Can you actually re-roll a character, an existing character? I know there's the one-time mode.
No, so once you start playing a saved character, it's locked in and it stays like it is. Now you can make it better through magical weapons and stuff, magical items. Magical items can increase your dexterity and stuff. And then we have other ways coming that we're not talking about yet that will also enhance your abilities. But
And you do level up your character too.
well, you can level up your characters, but that will never change your stats.
Right.
So like if you have negative 15% luck, unless you get some magical item that helps you with your luck, you're going to have negative 15% luck with that character forever until you reset it.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
So yeah, when you're choosing your characters for the first time, you see them, that may make you choose one over the other.
Yeah, and then, but like somebody said, one shot, or maybe it was you.
Right, that's true.
Anytime you want, you can play a character as a one shot. You play it back from the beginning, and then if you play it as a one shot, you're going to play with this week's stats, and the progress is not saved. But you play with, like, so you're going to play your rogue, and you have a 7th level rogue that you're not playing with. You're playing with now a 1st level rogue with this week's stats, and then you start backing at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, which is a good point. That allows you different ways of playing too.
Yeah.
One shot and the full campaign. Both of them, we tried to really make sure that they were fun. So if you're playing one shot, it's just how far can I get in the campaigin, and there's a different fun to that than.
Yeah, that's very important to
through it.
us. Like the whole save your progress thing is very, very cool, but at the end of the day, it needs to be a pinball machine that you just walk up and you push start and you pull the plunger and you play, and even if you've never heard of the internet, right? It's still a fun pinball machine with lots of depth, lots of breadth, and lots of fun, and that's first and foremost with Brian and I.
Yep. Okay, I think we're probably good.
Yeah.
Oh wait, we do have something for everybody suffering through Dwight.
This is Brian. Brian did all this. No. Brian does this cool shit.
Where's my sample?
All right, we have enough for all but 5 of you. 5 of you have to not get anything. And when I say we, I mean Brian. Brian and his girlfriend Kimberly made all these. What are we doing? Brian, it's over there.
I'm trying to find him.
It's over there.
Where'd he go? Oh, there he is. He flew off. So I made these little dragon toys for everybody. I like trying to make little toys out of most of the games.
Can you hear him? Brian, Mike.
Yeah, so I try to make these little toys for every game, and we give them away at shows and stuff for people who actually come to our talks and such. But this is a little guy. He comes in a little kit. You actually build him, and then if you press in the center, he flaps his wings. I think he can even hold a pinball on his back, on his neck too, if you try. So yeah, he's cool. So everybody who's come, I have a bunch of them up here. Come grab one. Have some fun with them. And good luck building them. Yep, and thanks everybody for coming.
Would you like to stick your hand in the
Dragon toy.
Oh yeah, let's. We got that too. So we also have a gelatinous cube that this creature brought us, and you are free to stick your hand into the cube and see what you get.
Don't do it. All right, good. And then after you've done this.
And if you're afraid of the cube, you can just come grab a dragon too. Feel free.
Thank you. One per person, everyone. Big fan of your table.
Oh, thanks.
Very cool. Thanks so much.
That would be Dwight. Oh, really? Oh, my God. What are the chances of that, right?
Make sure you take this, Gerald.